Hey Barbs, I did a little testing. I wanted to publish some results, and I wanted to first give a shout out and a thank you to Lunatalli for discovering some of this stuff. I've done a little bit of not 100% thorough testing, but I have added a little bit of, I guess you could call it, group knowledge to our understanding of how the Ravenous Ring swaps weapons and the effects of that. So let's first have a look at what Lunatalli found and what he said and what his concerns are, and then I'll talk about what I found. So real quick, let's just watch some of his video from, I guess it was like a week ago. Yeah.
Now, the other interaction with Ring of the Ravenous that I have never seen anyone talk about it, and I think it's huge, is that it doesn't actually use the weapons stat for charge. Yes, you heard me. What that means is that here you can see I have flawless technique. Okay, damaging enemies with one-handed weapons increases my crit strike chance. So the obvious choice in my build, using Rend, would be to set my Rend for my grandfather to have the highest damage possible, and then my charge for dual wields, because then if I attack enemies and I hit them in AoE with the charge, it will do the damage with one-handed weapons and give me flawless technique. Does it actually happen? Let's have a look. I didn't get the flawless technique. As you can see, this is carnage. This is the attack speed, okay? This is not the crit strike chance. The reason is that the weapons are changed midway. When you cast the charge, that's when you have the weapon. But when you actually do the damage with charge, you are already using your two-handed sword. So none of the techniques, or none of the expertise, not techniques, none of the expertise or anything, any paragon point, nothing will work because Rend is the weapon that will be used for the damage of the charge as well.
All right. So yeah, I wanted to investigate that because it's very interesting for any number of different charge builds that use the Ravenous Ring, whether your charge build is like a direct damage overpower charge build, or whether your charge build is just, you're charging and your real damage comes from Rend. Understanding what's actually going on there is very important because it'll affect which weapons we want to assign to charge and Rend and which Paragon legendary Paragon nodes we want to pick up, what weapon expertises we want to use, that kind of thing. So let me show what I did and what I found. All right, so I had a few concerns, a few different tests I wanted to isolate exactly what works, what doesn't with charge with Ravenous Ring when you've got different weapons on charge, different weapons on Rend. So first of all, I prefer the direct damage overpower charge. I use the Ravenous Ring just because it makes me swap weapons an extra time. My build is Whirlwind charge. Whirlwind doesn't do much damage. I just use Whirlwind to proc Flawless Technique. I use it to apply Veteran Brawler and vulnerable to bosses and to stack up Earth Striker. And then I charge in to kill the boss with one hit with an overpower charge. Rend itself does not do significant damage for me. I don't think I even have points in it. I think I have like Rend gloves because there's no other like good affix on gloves for a charge direct damage build. And I usually have a two-handed mace for charge, a two-handed axe for Rend, and one-handers for Whirlwind. So that lets me hit frequently with Whirlwind, so I stack up Veteran Brawler quickly. It also makes the ticks cost less. It also, having Rend on a different weapon than Whirlwind means that when I charge Rend Whirlwind, I get 3 swaps, and I'm really only using 2 abilities. So I get an Earth Striker on every 3rd charge. It's beautiful. It kind of is messed up. It doesn't work a lot of the time, but you can predict when it will work and when it won't, and force it to work with just a little bit of effort when you're heading into a boss fight. So that's good enough for me. I don't need the overpower damage on trash. It's just, something for bosses. Anyway, one huge thing that affects your overpower damage is whether or not you're using a two-hand mace, because you have things like two-hand mace expertise, which if you crit gives you 15% more damage. You've got Crusher Glyph, which gives you another 30% damage with maces when you overpower. I think there's a couple other things, but depending on what you assign to Rend, if you're actually dealing charge damage with the Rend weapon, you could be missing like half your damage. So I first wanted to test which weapon is actually dealing damage, and here's my test for that. I have currently equipped a two-hand hammer with 38 DPS, and I charge with that. My Rend weapon is a max level axe, so I'm barely doing any direct damage here. 1,000, 3,000, 800. Charge again, get a little more data. Okay, damage between 1,000 and 8.6 thousand. We'll do one more charge. Damage between 2,000 and 8.6 thousand. So now I'm going to switch to my Hellhammer. I'm using the Hellhammer because it has 100 times more DPS, and it only adds 33% additive damage, and it has no additional multiplicative damage that will apply in this test. So my additive damage bucket will go up by about 10%, while my weapon DPS will go up by 100. So if I'm charging with this weapon and charge direct damage is dealt with the two-hand hammer that I have assigned to charge, it will actually, my damage should go up by a factor of 100. If I'm actually dealing charge direct damage with my axe, which is assigned to Rend, then the charge direct damage would only go up by like 10% because of the additive damage. So let's see what happens here. All right, now I'm charging for between 128k to 374k. All right, up to 745k. So you can see these crits are about 100 times larger than the crits in the the beginning half of the video. So since I'm doing about 100 times more damage, I can confidently say that charge direct damage is dealt by the weapon assigned to charge, not the weapon assigned to Rend. So what's the next thing I wanted to test? I want to see if procs that require dealing direct damage with a particular weapon type, whether they will proc on charge or not. So what I've done in this case is I went ahead and assigned my two-hand mace to charge and my two-hand axe to Rend, and I picked up 3 out of 3 points in concussion. So if I'm dealing direct damage with my charge weapon, it should proc concussion. If I'm dealing direct damage with the Rend weapon, it should not proc concussion. And on the second charge, I give a concussion to that dummy. I do not have anemia or any other source of stuns on this character, so I can confidently say that things that proc off of two-handed maces will proc off of charge if you have a two-handed mace assigned to charge, even if your Rend weapon is not a two-handed mace, right? And it can't be. But I think in general this means that any effect that can proc off of a charge weapon will proc off of your charge weapon, even if, you know, the Rend weapon is a different weapon. All right, so the next test is regarding expertise, because I have concerns about, can I like full screen this? Yeah, okay, let's full screen this. So, expertise. The two-hand mace expertise gives you 15% crit strike damage against vulnerable enemies while you're berserking. That's great for overpower crit builds. The two-handed axe expertise gives you 15% damage to vulnerable enemies and 10% crit strike chance, I think, against vulnerable enemies. So both of those are good. But if you have a couple of one-handed weapons assigned to Rend, and you're getting the charge expertise of your Rend weapons, that would be pretty bad if you're trying to deal a ton of direct damage with charge. So what expertise are we actually getting on our charge? Is it from the charge weapon or from the Rend weapon? To test this, I used two-handed axes because most of the expertise bonuses do not actually give you a buff, so it's hard to tell whether they're being applied or not. But one-hand axe expertise actually gives you a attack speed buff that appears on your buff icon list. So just to demonstrate that, I am performing Whirlwind with one-handed axes, and when you crit, there's a chance to proc one-hand axe expertise. And you can see there when I crit with Whirlwind, it does eventually proc. It's a low chance, but it's a chance. So that's what it looks like. That's what we're looking for. I want to see if I can proc that with charge, with charging with one-handed axes, and I want to see if I can proc that with charge when I have one-handed axes on the rend weapon, not the charge weapon. So this should demonstrate whether I am getting the expertise of the charge weapon or the rend weapon when I charge. So first I have charge, two-handed mace, rend, one-handed axes. So I charge a lot. Charge over and over and over. Every time it crits, I should get a chance to proc one-hand axe expertise. I don't get it a single time, even though I'm critting. So I'm pretty sure charge is not getting the expertise of the rend weapon. Charge is getting the expertise of the charge weapon. So let's switch now. I'll charge with... Okay, now I'm rending with a two-hand sword. I'm charging with one-handed axes. And let's see if I get the one-hand axe expertise when I charge now. Remember, it has to proc, it's a low chance, and it has to crit. So I'll just try to charge. Hopefully I crit. Maybe axe will proc. There. The fifth time I charge with one-handed axes, I get one-handed axe expertise. Again, it's a low chance to proc. It only happens when you crit with one-handed axes. My charge is using one-handed axes, my rend is not. So I must be getting the expertise of my charge weapon when I charge, not the expertise of the rend weapon.